We made this.
Welcome to the Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and joined today by a new guest, and that is Claire Downs. Claire, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. My kids are up and about, so they might break in at some point to cause trouble. But for now, they seem to be pretty calm. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a writer and director. I just also had my first game title released this year on Meta Quest and PlayStation VR. And yeah, that's that. I had my honeymoon in Japan. We can talk about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. Well, before we talk about that, tell us about your game. What's the title? What's it called? What's it about?
The game is The Seventh Guest for VR, which is The Seventh Guest was a computer game in the early 90s. And my game is I was the sole writer of the reboot produced by Vertigo Games.
Very cool.
Yeah, for
So
VR.
and that just came out now?
Came out on October 17th.
Okay, all right. So people can go check that out then. Awesome, cool. I've
Yeah.
actually got I do have a PlayStation VR, and with my kids, it's been tough to play these days. But I'll have to check that out at some point.
A little tough to play VR while watching children when you're supposed to be looking at them.
Yeah,
Have your
especially
head
because
covered.
yeah, it's well that too, but also it's just like they're very intrigued by cables, so they like to pull on stuff. And with the other game stuff, it's everything's wireless now, so it's much easier. But the
Yeah.
VR stuff is still all hardwired, so they get very curious about that. And my son especially likes to walk in front of me when I'm trying to do VR stuff.
Oh yeah. Maybe you should try MetaQuest. Then I think that if someone walks in front, although not sure how tall he is,
Yeah, he's not very tall at all. I don't think
he
he'd
wouldn't
register
break
in it.
the.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So well, and tell us about your honeymoon. Whereabouts in Japan did you go?
So I was in Japan in 2019. Uh, so I was there for a month. We went all over the place. We went to, and it was the trip of a lifetime. It was something I had planned, since I was in my early 20s.
Mm,
And so it was like Tokyo. We went to Matsumoto Castle
mm-hmm.
in Matsumoto. We went to Kanazawa. We went to Kyoto, Osaka, and then trying to remember the town that we went to it's near Mount Fuji. That's like a romantic town. We took the romance train there.
Oh, okay.
And we actually were going to go to Kyoto for longer, but we liked Osaka so much. I'm from Chicago. It
Mm-hmm.
really reminded me. They are sister cities, and it really reminded me of Chicago. So we ended up switching up our Kyoto plans, and ended up only doing a day trip to Kyoto and staying in Osaka for much longer than intended. And I don't regret that decision at all. We were also there in May, so it was getting a little hot, but it was post cherry blossom season.
Mm-hmm.
But still, Kyoto is very busy. It's very
Yeah.
touristy, which is the point. It's a
Mm-hmm.
cultural heart of Japan, and it we just weren't by that point. We weren't feeling the touristy vibes. It was like towards the end of our trip that we were there, so
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of just wanted to like be in a city and like eat food and go shopping and like see a few things here and there instead of just like doing touristy stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been.
Kanazawa, great though.
Yeah, I haven't been to Kyoto, but I have been to Osaka, and also, we were talking like we're both from Chicago, and yeah, I get the same feeling. Like Osaka definitely feels like a Japanese version of Chicago, and I felt
Yeah.
much more at home there than I did in Tokyo. Tokyo felt very cold to me. I didn't really like Tokyo that much.
Yeah, I mean it's the New York or the London of
Right.
yeah, but Osaka, the river vibes, the food,
Hmm.
the people are a little I felt like, maybe you could have blue hair there or
Yeah.
have your collar undone. a little less business forward.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, yeah. The whole Kansai feel of it, too. Not only Osaka, but also Kobe. Kobe's also got to feel like that too, where it's
Okay.
people feel much more welcoming there, and it's very close to Osaka. They're like right next to each other. Um, Also,
That's
next time
cool.
you go, Fukuoka is also a really cool place to visit. I thought that's got kind of like I live in Kagoshima, so for me, it's very much it's got a lot of that old school, you know, you know, charm to it. It's got people are very have like kind of like
Mhm.
very friendly, and Fukuoka definitely feels like that as well. It's kind of like they've got kind of like the Kyushu hospitality mixed a bit with the Osaka vibe, so it's got a little bit of a mix of both there. So Fukuoka is a really cool place to visit as well.
That's awesome. I forgot one thing we also did was we did, the Alpine route to Shirakawa-go.
Hmm.
Do you know what that is?
No, I've
Yeah.
never heard of that.
The Alpine route is basically, a like a how would I describe it? There's this Japanese word that maybe you can help me fill in that's like the thrill of, like, going on little different modes of transportation,
Oh no, I don't
and
know.
and so to get across the middle, uh, to go from Matsumoto Castle to Kanazawa,
Hmm.
you're like there's a mountain in the middle, and so there's a way you go where you get on, like, first, like, a tram, and then, like, a little train, and then a little trolley, and then the little other thing, and then you get to the top, and the top has snow.
Hmm.
Also in the middle, you see a dam, the Kurobi Dam, which,
Okay.
the Japanese people that were tourists were more excited about than us, because the joy of engineering is more
Hmm.
exciting to them, I think. Then, you do, like, little different modes of transportation down, and then you end your trip near Shirakawa-go, which is I'm pronouncing that terribly, but it's like a UNESCO heritage site with, like, thatched
Okay.
roofs.
Oh, okay, okay.
But along the way, you're getting little stamps, and you're also, like, in this, like, passport,
Hmm.
and it doesn't take that long. It takes, like, 4 hours.
Hmm.
You 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 can go around it, but it actually takes longer. So it's,
Oh,
like, the
okay.
shorter way. I
Yeah, there's a
recommend
lot of
this. Yeah.
that sounds cool. Yeah, there's a lot of little tour type things that they have with like the stamps. I remember I used to live in Ehime, and I had some students in one of my English classes. They were like part of like some cultural group where they lead tours around like the different pilgrimage sites in
Okay.
Ehime or something like that. So, and they also had this thing with like these stamp books and stuff. They were telling me. So, a lot of places do that. It's different ways they try to get people to see more of the tourist stuff. Um,
Yeah.
that's cool. And about a little bit more about your writing and directing. How did you get started in that?
So I went to NYU for college, and I came out of, college, and I was an actor.
Hmm.
I studied theater, and I wasn't really sure how to get into theater, so I started doing comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a comedy theater in New York City.
Hmm.
And I got on a sketch team as a writer, so I wrote sketch comedy. And my first like thing that wasn't just doing comedy for free was I pitched a TV show to Nickelodeon on a whim. It was like a complete accident. I responded to an email that they sent to all the writers, and no one else responded but me, of 60 people. So, and then I showed up and I didn't really know what I was doing there. Like the email was written in kind of a corporate speak,
Hmm.
and I didn't understand, like, they were, like, looking for television solutions, and I didn't know that meant, like, they wanted script ideas. So, I ended up just having a conversation with one of the guys in the office who was I guess I was supposed to pitch to, and then that turned into me, like, coming up with an idea with him in the room, and then ended up pitching a TV pilot. Now, this is a kid's TV pilot, it didn't go anywhere,
Hmm.
but it ended up me getting like my first little credit, and then I was able to kind of parlay that into some other writing credits along the way. And that's how I got started. And I would say primarily luck and
Hmm.
opportunism, and just like saying yes to things, to see if they work out.
Right. Yeah. Do you know much about Takashi Miike?
Is No, I don't.
Okay, so he's directed a bunch of very prolific Japanese director. He directed things like Audition, Ichi the Killer, One Missed
Uh-huh.
Call. More recently, he directed like the I think he did Blade of the Immortal, Yakuza, based on the video game. So he's done a ton of movies, and the way he got started is actually very similar to your story because he was in film school, but he was a bad student. And he like was not going to classes or anything like that, and he just happened to see this flyer on the bulletin board asking for like assistant directors or like interns or something like that.
Yeah.
And none of the other students saw it because they were so busy on their film projects. So he was the only person who applied for it, and then he parlayed that into directing work.
That's great. I mean, and then the way I got into games writing is like going to be even more infuriating for people who are fans of games. So during first of all, I have always played games. I
Mhm.
stopped from like age 20 to age 30 because I don't have a lot of impulse control when it comes
Mhm.
to games. So I did not have a console. I would play other thing like other like games on my phone or the computer, but like I
Mhm.
didn't have a console or VR.
Mhm.
And so I during the pandemic I was just feeling like okay, so I had watched Singing in the Rain, and Singing in the Rain is about the end of the silent era and
Right.
how it took all the people by, surprise that there was talking in movies. And I started to think about how film and TV might be towards the end of its era. And
Mhm.
it might be. I love it so much, but I was like, well, what would be the next thing and what's the next medium that's sort of in the middle, cuz
Mhm.
video games are kind of in the middle.
Right.
If you believe they started in the 70s, then it's in the mid era. In the mid era of any medium is when things get interesting. Think
Mhm.
about like film in the 60s. We started to allow like female perspectives or
Mhm.
diverse perspectives, or international cinema started, like French
Right.
cinema started
The
showing
end
up.
of the
So
studio system and all that too. A lot more like the
exactly.
rise of the auteur director, the rise of like the blockbuster, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So I'm literally sitting at the kitchen table waiting for my husband to like bring me dinner because it was turn hit to cook, and I tweeted like, people write video games, right? Like I
Mhm.
tweeted this. I was like, so how do people start writing video games? And this video game writer who's sort of prominent named Rob Yescombe, who wrote Cube,
Mhm.
and some other things, uh, ended up messaging me, and he's like, it sounds like you want to get into video games and I'm trying to get into feature writing. Can
Oh,
we have a
okay.
chat? So he ended up he ended up helping me get a few early opportunities because he is trying to get out of video game writing.
Mhm.
And he actually ended up he's on the Variety like screenwriters to watch
Oh, really?
this month. Like he's got a feature coming out with John Cena and Aquafina next year.
Is that
And
Acme movie?
yeah, yeah,
Oh.
it's no, not
Oh,
the
okay, okay.
Acme movie.
Oh, okay.
It's actually called Grand Theft Lotto, which is a video game kind of movie.
Oh, okay. That sounds.
Anyway,
I have not heard about this, but I am very intrigued. I love John Cena and Aquafina, so I am so curious about this now.
and it's Paul Feig, and so his movie's coming out next year, and he ended up kind of starting to give me, when people would give him low money opportunity
Mhm.
game meetings, like, oh, will you meet with me about my indie game? He would be like, meet with Claire, she wants to like write games and I
Mhm.
recommend her.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into games writing, and I know that's really infuriating, but what's funny is my whole writing career as a screenwriter, as a comedy writer, I never had a mentor.
Right.
Would have killed someone to have some older person
Mhm.
help me in this
Yeah.
way. I would have murdered someone. I would have 2LDK'd someone for that. But I never had that. I always tried to reach out to people and say, especially older female writers, I would be like, can you, get coffee with me? Tell me what it's like. And we just never had this connection. But Rob and I have this like weird psychic
Mhm.
connection where we just did connect over Zoom. It wasn't just like, oh, we met and then he gave me opportunities. We became really good friends,
Right.
and we had a special connection that I can't describe.
Yeah.
Uh So isn't that funny? Like, so it just kind of, I would say for anyone looking to pursue anything creative, just make the lens really
Yeah,
wide. Because
yeah.
I never said I wanted to do kids TV either,
Mhm.
and I racked up a lot of kids TV credits early in my career just from being open to that, and I don't
Yeah,
regret it at all.
yeah, it's amazing how these stories are always so interesting to hearing how people got into the industry because it's I I remember a comic book writer. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Mark Wade. He said that, and he was specifically talking about breaking into comics, but I think it also applies to other art forms. And he said that breaking into comics is tough because somebody finds a hole in the wall and enters in, and then they patch up that hole right away.
Yeah, exactly. And you also, when you find the hole, you have to really kick the hole in so it's
Yeah,
big,
yeah.
so you get more opportunities from it. Like you have to make the most out of every single small
Mm.
opportunity because it's just it's so competitive. And we'll get into this in the movie. I mean, the
Hmm.
movie is really apt for what we're talking about because it's like when Lana is like, well, I'm a film actress, I don't do theater.
Hmm.
It's like really in this it really like it's this movie spoke to me in so many ways that I did not predict it would.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's such a good point too. And yeah, and it's so funny when people, because I mean, I studied creative writing as my master's, but I didn't do it because I was already a published author when I did it. But it was funny when I was looking at the other people who were there, who all kind of had this idea that it's like, oh, I just get a degree and then I go and then I become a writer, and it's like, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, I published several novels myself, and that's how I got in, and it's not like a typical job. It's everybody's got to find their own way into it, and yeah, and a lot of it is, like you said, a lot of it is just kind of like luck and just like knowing people, and just like putting yourself out there and saying yes to opportunities.
Or is
That's
it, I
so
mean,
common. Yeah.
creative roadblocks always help me. Like
Yeah.
I like writing games and maybe kids stuff too because the parameters are really narrow.
Hmm.
Like it's not just like write the best movie, go out there and
Right.
write Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix. It's like it's okay, VR, it's like there's all these rules
Hmm.
with VR, but then you have to make the best story
Hmm.
inside of those parameters. Or with kids, it's like all the different kids projects I've done, they tell you the age range and they're very
Hmm.
specific. And they'll even have like a child psychologist be like, "Hey, kids this age don't understand this.
Hmm.
And kids this age do understand these other things." Like for example, I did a project with Peppa Pig that was ages 3 to 5, and it was like a learning game that I did with them, and I wanted to put like something with like an alien just as an
Hmm.
example, and they were like, children don't know what aliens are, they don't
Hmm.
even know what earth, like our earth is. Let's not introduce them to a fantastical concept
Hmm.
of like something that could either scare them or just be like too broad of a concept.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like those narrow parameters help you, I think, be more creative.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and this film, we can talk about it too, is like the Duel project,
Hmm.
if you want to like explain it. Like
Well, yeah,
so
we'll get into that. I just want to
it's
talk about a
like
few other things before
is
we
a
jump too
creative
much.
parameter. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But just like me being curious too, because I've written novels, I've written
Yeah.
comics, I've written screenplays, and I've never written video games though. And so I am curious how different was it from writing scripts for like movies or TV shows or sketches to writing video game scripts.
So VR is closest to theater because
Okay.
it's theater in the round, and the game that I worked on, like the game I wrote was a uh mystery with 7 or 8 characters. So just
Mm,
like you're picturing Clue or any Agatha Christie, right? They have the classic scene in the living room where they try to break everything down or they split off in pairs. Like
mm,
every mystery has these tropes. So but that needed to be written in like a theatrical way because it's the player can be in the center of the scene, they can be on the side, and
mm,
it needs to be every joke or every little comment needs to be heard from every angle.
mm,
Also with games, you can supplement your like your story, your cutscenes with like things found, like found objects, like letters that are in the drawer or
Hmm.
tickets to a train that they never took or something.
Hmm.
But you cannot assume that the player will find those things or even read them.
Right.
They could be just picked up and thrown away and then they don't hear them or they're too busy trying to solve a puzzle.
Hmm.
With this game, I was given roughly the outline of the story, although that was pretty open.
Hmm.
This game, there's every game has a few endings. But yeah, and the things I worked on, worked on a few other games that did not come out.
Hmm.
Um, and I've never worked on anything with like an extreme branching dialogue tree. That would mean that I was be part of a team, and I've always been by myself. I'd love to
Okay.
work on something like that, like your Red Dead Redemption or your Skyrim or
Right. Or
something like
like
that, where
the
it's like a
Telltale
short,
games and that kind of stuff.
right?
Yeah.
But with that, you're usually part of a team.
Right. Right.
I did work on some dialogue barks for that type of project, but I was at the very end. I was
Okay.
just filling in a spreadsheet of things I thought different characters would say.
Okay.
So I didn't even really know what the full story was at that point.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, this is a podcast about Japanese movies. So what's kind of your history with Japanese cinema?
I mean, so when you had I looked at your letterbox,
Hmm.
and I had seen almost all of the anime, the Miyazaki, Tokyo Godfathers. I had
Hmm.
seen a lot of the classics, especially like, like the older films. But there's a lot that I want to watch. I try to watch a lot of movies, and I'm always interested in finding movies that I have never heard of that have like a
Hmm.
great log line, which is why I picked this one. But I
Okay.
don't have like a vast history of cinema, of Japanese cinema. I don't think I have a good like I don't when I clicked on this director's name, for example,
Hmm.
he's a very prominent director. I haven't seen any of his other movies.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure if I've seen any of his other movies, but like you mentioned, this was part of the dual project that producer Shinya Kawai had this challenge to that he gave to the director of this, Yukihiko Tsutsumi and Yuhei Kitamura. And Kitamura also probably most familiar to people. He directed like the Verses, and he directed. I think he directed one of the Godzilla, some of the Godzilla movies, I believe, too, before Shin Godzilla. Um, yeah, he did Godzilla Final Wars. He also did Sky High, which is this really cool like sci-fi fantasy film. Um,
And
and
he did Metal Gear Solid
oh, did he? I didn't
yeah,
know that.
2,
Oh, I
I
did not
believe.
know that. Okay.
Let me check. He did Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. Um, and he directed
Ah.
my dear friend David Hayter, my husband's mentor, I would say,
Oh, really?
and friend. Yes, he directed David Hayter in that project.
Oh man,
So
I
it's
love
fun.
David Hayter in those games. He's so good.
He's an incredible person. He's a generous performer. He's a
Mhm.
wonderful writer. He wrote on a TV show with my husband, and then they have worked on subsequent projects together.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he
And
wrote the first X-Men movie as well, I believe.
and yes, he did. And yeah, he's written a few other things. But yeah.
Yeah.
But so I feel one degree of separation from that director, but
Mhm.
the director of 2LDK, no, I don't know his stuff very
Yeah.
well.
Well, I'm looking at his. There is one other movie I've seen of his, which is completely different from this, and it's Initiation Love, which is this like this like romantic drama movie, which it we talked about it in one. I talked about it on one of the early episodes of this show, and it's an interesting movie. It had some really cool things about it. But it's they I think they put too much emphasis on the whole idea of it being a twist ending, because
Mhm.
even like the poster covers and stuff, they broadcast about the fact that you will not believe the twist ending. And then you get to the twist ending like, yeah, it's kind of clever, but at the same time the rest of the movie is a lot more interesting than the twist.
From where I'm sitting, it does seem like this, although it is like his fourth movie on his Wikipedia,
Hmm.
it seems like it was his like big break. Like
Seems
it's
like
a
it, yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, so Kawai's challenge was he wanted them to create a feature length movie, each that had a duel in it, two actors and one setting, along with the rule that the filming has to be completed in just about a week. 2LDK was Tsusumi's part, Aragami was Kitamoto's part in it, and I'm not sure how much you know about Japanese real estate, or for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, but 2LDK in Japan, when they advertise home listings, like for apartments or houses, they don't describe it in terms of square footage or anything like that, but they describe it in terms of a number, which is usually the number of bedrooms. And then LDK would be if there's a living room, if there's a dining room, if there's a kitchen. So most places would be like, for example, 1K would be like a studio apartment. Uh, or no, they'd say one room for a studio apartment, but they have like 1K would be like one bedroom, and then they'd have a kitchen attached. DK, it's like, and calling it a dining room is kind of generous. It's just basically a little bit more extra kitchen space.
So
Um,
they do that to this day, you're saying.
yes, yeah, they still do it
Okay.
like all the time. We were looking, like, we live in a house here in our this house was advertised as I believe is advertised as a 2LDK as well. So this is a 2LDK that we live in. And to give you an idea, it's really, there's a lot of wiggle room in like how much size that can be, because we have a house that's called 2LDK, but you can also have my the last place we lived in was technically a, I think it might have been a 3DK is how it was advertised as, but that, and so by hearing that you think it might be bigger, but it was actually smaller.
Interesting.
So yeah,
The
there's a lot of wiggle room in how big the places can be, and especially, Japanese real estate homes, not very big to begin with, especially compared to American places.
Yeah, and especially in Tokyo where this
Hmm.
takes
Oh yeah,
place.
yeah.
So important. Yeah.
So yeah, the basic story. So this came out in 2003, and it is all set in this apartment. And these two roommates, we've got Nozomi, who's played by Eiko Koike, and Lana, who's played by Maho Nonami. Eiko Koike, people might be familiar with her. She was in Kamikaze Girls, which again is a movie we talked about early on in the show. But she's been in a bunch of stuff. She's probably, I think she's a little bit bigger than Nonami was. Um, yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not very familiar with Nonami outside of this movie.
I have seen her in something and I figured it out yesterday and now I can't remember what I've seen her in because she looks so familiar to me. But it was kind of surprising because Nonami is uh like she's Lana and she's kind of the more she seems like the more successful quote unquote actress in the
Right.
film.
Yeah. So you said this was the first time you watched this movie. I had
Yes.
first seen this years ago. I think before I even moved to Japan is when I first saw it. I saw it probably like around maybe a few years after it came out. So what were some things that kind of jumped out for you in this movie?
So, it's a classic like roommates story. It's they're opposites
Mm-hmm.
and it's definitely about how one goes about pursuing the arts and how if there's a path to success and if you should fake it till you make it or you should do the hard thing and do like theater first and care about the classics and care about the word, if you should sleep with people in your industry to get ahead or change your name, change your identity, or if you should just like be very monk like about your and don't go out and don't party and have a strict diet, and those two opposites were really interesting to me. Also, I felt that the director really used the 2LDK, like it's the promise of the premise, right? Like movie's called 2LDK, he uses every part of this apartment and the apartment is I think quite interesting, even for a Japanese apartment. Like, even though it's different from an American apartment to me, there's like one room that's a tatami room. There's a parrot. There's like some South American murals because it says it was like owned by like the person who owned it before, or they're renting it from. What the wife is South American, so
The
there's like
producer, yeah, the producer had a miss. Apparently, it was like the producer, I think, and
Miss,
he owned this place, and he had his mistress was from Peru, and she was living there.
yeah, so there's like some South American touches to it, and they use every single room, and there's scenes in the different rooms, which I thought was really great. And the length is also fascinating to me. It's 77 minutes
Yeah,
long
yeah,
or
it's
78.
that's yeah. You were asking in an email if there was like a different version that I got here in Japan, but no, my version too, the one I rented here, it's very similar length, like 77 minutes. So it doesn't look like there were
Okay,
any edits done to it. The whole idea was like it was supposed to be like kind of like these short projects.
but the structure is very good. The
Yeah.
first 30 minutes are like, it's like the first half is
Mhm.
tension building and the second half is the action. Like,
Yes.
it's a good structure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people when they watch this movie, I think they focus a lot on that battle at the in the second half, but there's a lot of stuff happening in the first half that's really well done, and I didn't notice a lot of this stuff before I came to Japan, but after coming here and living here, like there's this concept in Japan. I'm not sure if you know this, but it's the concept of honne tatemai. Do you know this?
No.
Okay, so honne tatemai, it's kind of like honne means like the your inner voice, like your true voice, and tatemai is kind of like the persona you project outward. So it's kind of like this idea of like so honne is like your real feelings, how you really feel about stuff. Tatemai is like the way you act around other people. So you see that a lot in that first half with like their internal monologues as voiceovers as they're talking to each other, and how they've got kind of like this this kind of like fakes on this surface level like friendship type of thing, how they pretend to like each other throughout most of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so relatable, just like anyone who's had to live in a big city with roommates, of being like, well, I have to make this a civil relationship because I know that I'm going to be seeing this person every single day, 24 hours a day, potentially, for as long as the lease is. So I'm going to just have to be friendly and civil and just, but then you see each of their individual breaking points with the things that bother each other, of what their behavior is that just pushes them over the edge, like, between like, finding out that the other used their shampoo, to the one, to Nonami is like labeling each egg to so that they can make sure not to steal each other's food. It's
So
very
yeah,
relatable.
yeah, I've only had there was only a period of like a stretch of like 2 semesters of university when I had a roommate. Other than that, I either lived with my parents or I lived on my own. I mean, technically, when when my wife when my girlfriend moved in, right? Technically, we were roommates there, but it's a different feel when you're in a romantic relationship with someone and you start living together versus being forced to share an apartment with someone. And I remember like my first year in university living in the dorms and having 2 different roommates over the course of that semester. The first one being someone who loved blasting rap music at extreme levels, and who would always leave the door open even when there was nobody in the room. And then the other guy who wore nothing but a towel for most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the part that I think is just so great about it. And the early dialogue is like, you're like, this is the day that they can't take it anymore,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also a lot of stuff that's being commented on, I think, about the way that the Japanese entertainment industry is run. So, like,
Yes.
a lot of the stuff coming out now about the Johnny's agency, Johnny Kitagawa, and like
Yes, I heard
this,
about that.
yeah, and like the sexual abuses and all that. And you can see some of that in here. Like this, this producer had a mistress. Now he has these 2 girls living there. Lana is only getting offers for like sexy roles,
Sexy.
and
Yeah.
and they make, there's one motion, like she keeps seeing this, she has had this past with this guy who was cheating on his wife with Lana, and then the wife ends up killing herself and their child in the bathtub, and so she keeps seeing images of this wife and the child in the bathtub, and there's a voiceover that's like, from her memories, and they suggest that she was apparently she might have been a porn star before as well. So there's that whole aspect of it, and this idea of like, and this is actually pretty. It's not uncommon in the Japanese industry for women who work in porn to then go on to other types of roles. So that happens a lot.
Yeah, and but it also suggests that she feels like she has to do these things to get ahead or
Right.
to afford her like glamorous exterior. Like she has, her hair is colored. She has like Chanel sunglasses. I mean, it's commented on in Nonami's internal dialogue of like what her like purse cost and what her shoes cost, Lana's shoes cost, and she has these very expensive items. And I get the sense that she is doing this to do, like I said before, like a fake it till you make it. Like if I can be
Right.
glamorous, then I like in appearance, then I'll get glamorous acting roles. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
get I'm a drama she says like I'm a drama star. Like I'm never going to do stand-up comedy. I'm never going to do these other things.
Right.
And she has this Rolodex of men. We don't know, but I think she has these like, these favorites. It's a very good early cell phone
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but she is like a Rolodex of favorites, and almost all of them have her number blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's implied that I think we're being shown that these are sort of like sugar daddy esque contacts, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's how she gets like the purses and whatnot, um, or dates that she is kind
Mm-hmm.
of like using to get like extra spending money or
Right.
something like that. And she also says that she gives her number to the director of the film
Right.
after
Yeah. Yeah.
audition.
Yeah. I got that same sense too. Like either these are like sugar daddy types. In Japan, it's called papakachi. So
Papa Kachi.
yeah,
What does Kachi mean?
I think kachi means like providing for or something along those lines.
Papa.
So
I'm gonna call my husband that. Papa Kachi.
yeah, just
That's
if you're in Japan, don't
don't do that.
don't call them that in public. Yeah. um. Uh. But and then they've got so yeah, they've got that aspect of it. I thought it could be that. It could also be it could be, like you said, like could be these casting directors or something like that. So it's these guys that she sleeps with to get roles type of thing, or to get money for these designer goods. Yeah, I'd gotten that exact same sense too. And she
That she
she talks
feels
to,
like
right.
compelled to do it. Yeah.
Yes, and also I noticed too the trophies and the ribbons and stuff she has in her room. Like she's this perpetual runner up too.
That's a great point, but also all the trophies are for beauty pageants.
Yes, yeah.
Like they're not for acting. They're all
Hmm.
for like one of them was like I can't remember. One of them had a great title. It was like Miss Long Legs or
Yeah,
something.
something like
Like
that. Yeah.
longest legs. And they're all like or for modeling. Like they're
Hmm.
not really, which is like goes back to her philosophy of being in the industry, which is like, and you see this a lot, which is like instead of just focusing on acting, what
Right.
is it about acting that you like?
Yeah.
You're focused on the out the outside of it, which
Hmm.
is like the looks and like the I'm a celebrity and a star. And I do believe that, and maybe this is the genius of the actress who played her, is like I do believe that she would be a good actress.
Hmm.
She's a tortured soul. She's an
Hmm.
interesting person. She does have like an interesting look to her. It's just that she's focused on the wrong things.
Right.
And then Nonami is like the straight and narrow, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. So Nonami is actually the actress who plays Lana. Nozomi
I'm
is
sorry.
yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm getting
It
I've
can be
been calling
confusing
it
sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, and
sorry.
Nozomi, she seems very
Nozomi.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She seems very much like the she's more of the very like she's the opposite extreme, right? She's very much into like the acting as an art form and like the craft in it and all that, and she's very set on the idea of like being an artist, and she's not as into the the opportunism type of approach to it. She's much more of like the work hard type of approach to it.
And she's not drinking, she's, like, taking
Right.
classes, she seems to be eating kinda healthy, and,
Hmm.
also all of her trophies were about, like, acting, and, like,
Yes.
she has the Dorothy a picture of her as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and all the, like, little clips from her school. She's also from a small island,
Yeah.
Sado Island, right?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah, and she's she was also the opposite of Lana, whereas Lana had like this, she was always this perpetual runner up type of thing, whereas Nozomi was like the star of her town. Right, all these people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she's such a good singer, such a good actress. She could really go places." So she goes from being kind of like a big fish in a small pond to a small pond and a small fish in a big pond.
And it's clear that she wants to, like, make them proud. She has, like, this sad T-shirt hanging that's, like, a
Hmm.
tourist T-shirt of Sado Island. Like,
Yeah.
it's, like, made me really I don't know, it was, like, some sad production design. I really liked it because it's, like, it's not even framed or anything, it's just, like, hanging there like a
Hmm.
ghost. Like, I thought it was supposed to evoke, like, a ghost. Tell me about Sado Island.
So I've heard of it, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
It's
Um,
that small.
I don't know how big or small it is. It's just not been in my purview, but it's in Niigata, and it is it's got a population of about 55,000 people. It says,
Oh,
and it's actually the second largest island after Okinawa. Um,
oh.
so, but that's all. That's just stuff I just looked up here in on Wikipedia. They do have there was like some controversy over it because Hashima Island was the site of forced labor during World War II, and so they had about like 1,500 Korean forced laborers were forced to work in the mines there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that's all that just came from Wikipedia just now. Like I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know much about it other than hearing the name before.
Wow. Yeah, and then Lana is grew up in Tokyo, she
Yeah,
said.
yeah, and well, also too, like, and Lana has that whole point about having this tatami allergy. She's allergic to the tatami mats. I thought that was also kind of an
Yeah.
interesting, maybe kind of a commentary of kind of like new versus old. Whereas she's much of a more of a younger generation type, where dyeing her hair and all that, wearing Western designer goods and stuff like that. Whereas Nozomi, she comes from a small town. She's you know much more connected to a little bit more traditional type stuff. She's got the natural hair color, natural, more Japanese style look, I guess you could say. She's, and like you said, she's got all this stuff from Sado Island. I think she isn't she wearing a shirt for Sado Island under her
Yes.
tracksuit as well? Yeah.
And her tracksuit is like a school
Right.
uniform
Yeah.
tracksuit.
Right. So much more
Um,
connected to her past type of thing. And whereas Lana's tatami allergy, because tatami is, it's kind of outdated now. It's most modern places don't use tatami because it's a pain in the ass, honestly. So they don't. It's not as it's like the older places are where you find it in. You don't find it so much in newer built houses. So that whole kind of idea too, I thought was something that was being commented on.
yeah. One point I wanted to make about Lana is that there was a conversation, like, snippet that I thought was very relatable to real conversations I've had
Hmm.
where I kind of become the Lana in the situation. So there are people that I feel come out to Hollywood that try to maintain their artistry.
Hmm.
And like, I mean, more like, sorry, their status as like an artiste.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like like, and they'll say, well, like, I don't see movies, or
Hmm.
like, I don't really watch this stuff. And I really agreed with Lana. That's like, well, if you want to be in movies, you have to watch them.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, you can't say I don't watch television and you want to be a TV writer.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, but I have heard people say that, or they believe nothing good is on television. Then I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
then why are you? You think you're going to be the sole change in it, or why
Right.
do you want to do it? And I agreed with Lana in this thing of like, well, you can't just say you're above the medium. And
Mm-hmm.
like the movie that they're auditioning for could, I've thought about this, like it could either be like an almost like, well, I know it's not, it's Japan, like Oscar bait
Mm-hmm.
type of movie, or it could be just like schlocky action movie. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
you can't really tell. And the movie 2LDK kind of makes you think it could be either based
Mm-hmm.
on how much they both care about it.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, the movie's called Yakuza Wives, right? Which was actually a movie. There is a movie called Yakuza Wives. I haven't seen it, but it is on my list. Um, I don't know if it's like supposed to be a remake of that movie, or if it's just coincidentally having the same title, or what. But but yeah, that could be something where it could be like a serious drama, or it could be like
Like a million
one.
dollar baby or
Exactly.
something.
Or, like something like, The Godfather or something along those lines. Or it could be something that's, this kind of like low budget, direct to video Yakuza Slock film or something like that. So it could be either one. Um, and there's
And
also this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, and then like if it is the Yakuza Slock film, it could involve combat, which
Mm-hmm.
is something I thought about. Like, are the wives doing, swordplay or
Mm-hmm.
like hand fighting in the movie, which or that could go into the fight that they end up having later.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
are they playing something out from a scene in the movie? Is
Mm-hmm.
something I also thought about.
That's a good point, too. Yeah. And also the whole idea about this, the people who think, I see that too in novel writing, because there are a lot of people on come on Reddit or something like that, and they're like, well, I don't read books myself. I'm like, well, what do you? Why are you not reading? Why do you want to write books then if you're not reading them? But yeah,
Right.
and you see that too. I think it was Christopher Nolan said this recently, talking about superhero films and all that, and he was saying that he's like, well, look, I made making superhero films gave me the clout to do other stuff I wanted to do, and you see that also with like Chris Evans. He made he does Captain America, and then after that he gets to do movies like Gifted and all this other kind of stuff where he gets to have these bigger performances in it. So yeah, there's this. And you obviously probably have more of a comment on this than I do, because I'm self-published author, so I just kind of do my own thing. But there is this kind of balance you have to strike between the commercial side of thing and the artistic side of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, my husband Brendan Gallagher, he sometimes gets into like a little argument with David Hayter, who
Mm-hmm.
loves action movies and writes them about like, why are we going out to see these like more niche movies? Like, we have American Cinematheque
Mm-hmm.
membership, and we're always going to the Academy Museum to see like a remastered Bob Fosse film, and
Mm-hmm.
like but it's, I think you can find what you love about a medium by finding what you like what specific movies you like or what
Mm-hmm.
specific books you like, but you have to love the medium itself. Like, you have to love the frame that the painting is going in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, do sculpture then.
Right. Yeah.
um
Yeah. There's also there's also this idea of this, and this kind of goes on to too with the treatment of women in Japanese entertainment industry. But this guy Izaki, who seems like he's two timing both of them, right? He's kind of like he's leaving messages for Nozomi. He's got this. He seems to have had a thing with Lana as well.
is he like a failed screenwriter? Is that what we got? Or that he's going back to school for screenwriting after not making it? I couldn't really figure it out.
Yeah, something like that. I couldn't really. I wasn't really completely clear on that.
But he kind of seemed to be one of those people that promises, like, if you date me, I'll put you in my
Right. Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
kind of like a nerdy guy. But I also, from the other perspective, when he was leaving messages, he did seem kind of sweet. So I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tell. This is why the movie is great, is its dual perspective.
Right.
I wouldn't, even though I would say that uh there is a protagonist, but
Hmm.
Nozomi is the protagonist,
Hmm.
but it is a dual perspective.
Yeah, yeah. There's also it's also an interesting thing because I saw someone on Letterbox commenting on I don't know if it was Letterbox or it was just another review I saw, but commenting on the kind of like a lack of a Bechtel test since they're fighting over a guy here, and I was thinking about it
Hmm.
and just like the way that the women are treated, it made me wonder: is this more a satire of misogyny, or is it more misogynistic itself?
I thought they were fighting over the role is the main fight,
Mm-hmm.
though.
That was probably that's what I kind of landed on too. But I think it's interesting how it presents this view of women in Japanese film when, and it does feel like you know it's almost cliche in a way how you got these two women who are fighting over this role and they descend into this escalation of violence. But in the same way, that's also can be viewed as like blaming the industry for putting them in this position in the first place.
Yes, or women, like pitting women against each
Yeah,
other.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But I felt that, like, I don't speak for all women or anything, but I
Hmm.
disagree with that comment because the main fight is about
Hmm.
the role,
Yeah.
and this guy is not connected to the film. He's
Hmm.
not the director of the movie, and he's not their agent or something.
Yeah.
He is affiliated with the industry and broadly maybe their agency, but he doesn't have a say in them getting the role or not. So
Right.
I think that, to me, most of the scenes pass the Bechdel test. I do think, yeah, maybe it might come from some, to see two like babes fighting it
Hmm.
out, yeah, maybe, but I also think it comes from like a long line of, like, I don't know, single white female
Hmm.
is a comp for this movie. And I think the log line is pretty, like, down the middle.
Hmm.
I didn't see, also, the characters are so good that
Yeah.
they are fully formed women. They are not thinly, like, they have their quirks. They're very specific. They both have different things they want out of being actresses,
Hmm.
that I feel that I feel that, Lana wants probably fame. That's
Hmm.
probably what, and adoration, and Nozomi wants like artistic, gratification,
I think so too. Yeah,
respect.
yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
feels like that, especially with the when you look inside their rooms and how they're decorated. Whereas
Yeah.
Nozomi's she's gotten the acclaim and all that, and so she's more after the feel what it feels like to be an actress, and whereas to have that artistic achievement. Whereas Lana, as the perpetual runner up, she wants the adoration type of thing.
Yeah, and I think that the character building, the world of their apartments, which is very specific,
Hmm.
plus I would say the way that they kind of, like, the fight kind of unravels. Like, it's not about nothing.
Hmm.
Yes, it is about the role, but it's about so much more than that. It's
Right.
like they truly kind of hate each other,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, for a number of reasons.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of disagree with that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It is a male directed movie. Um,
Yeah, that's why I was thinking
yeah.
about it. The whole cliche aspect of the pitting women against each other and all that, but it does it. I lean more towards it's a satire of that as opposed to it's leaning into those tropes because of what you said. Like they are very well drawn characters, and I feel like the movie it's kind of like banking on people's expectations to tell a much better story. Whereas like the expectation is like you said, oh, we're going to watch this movie about these two hot girls fighting each other in an apartment, but it's got so much more in it.
But they're never, when the fight breaks down, it's pretty disgusting.
Hmm.
Like, it's not like a wet t-shirt contest, mud
Right? Yeah.
wrestling. Like, they're not naked. And I know it's Japanese cinema, so it can be more conservative physically, but,
Hmm.
like, they're not, like, to me, sexualized. Like, it's pretty gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think again, that's another way that they're kind of playing on the audience expectations with it, where the audience you see this movie. I remember when first time I heard about it, just hearing the description, two women living in an apartment together are fighting over a part, and yeah, the expectation is something that's going to be a lot schlockier and more, um, exploitative, but when you actually see it, you're like, well, it's not that at all. It's actually got a lot of stuff that it's saying about the entertainment industry. The the women themselves, they're never filmed in a overtly sexualized manner at all. They're pretty much covered almost entirely, except for when they're bathing. But even then, it's not, the bathing is not sexualized really.
No, and they're also not it doesn't seem like they're trying to play it as that they're secretly attracted to each other, like in
Right.
Single
Yeah.
White Female.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Single White Female or even Showgirls, like I'm thinking of movies around that time that are about like two babes that kind of
Hmm.
hate each other. Those two movies, Single White Female is the better example. That is a much more sexualized movie
Yeah.
where it almost seems like they are like in love with each other
Hmm.
actually as much as they hate each other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what else did I say? Oh, also the just like the way it. And the funny thing too about like you talking about the violence too is that it's not as over the top as I think you might expect for like a Japanese movie like this. It's actually kind of subdued, the violence, and it doesn't feel, it's it is gross when it happens, but it's not like this. In a way, it kind of reminds me, talking about how it was gross. It kind of reminded me of Ichi the Killer. I'm not sure if you ever saw that movie.
No.
Okay, so Ichi the Killer's you mentioned Takashi Miike before. It's one of like his most famous movies, and it is supremely over the top with the violence. But he does this interesting thing with the violence where the scenes of the violence, they kind of alternate, where it's like something will be so over the top and cartoony that you laugh at it, and then the next scene of violence will be something that is so intense and off-putting that it's almost like it's punishing you because you laughed at the last scene.
Yeah, the order of I wish I had written down like the order of the acts of violence that they do to
Mhm.
each other because it's actually not escalating. It's not like
Right.
a western or like a Saw or like a torture movie where each thing is worse than the last act of violence to
Mhm.
each other. It's like this roller coaster. Like I forgot which comes right before it, but they're completely brutalized, and then Lana takes eggs out of the fridge and just starts throwing them like at Nozami's face,
Well, I mean,
and
like
like
the
like pretty
chainsaw.
slowly.
Yeah, yeah. The chainsaw comes out like almost right away, and then
Chainsaw.
it de-escalates from there. Which
Yeah,
I thought the chainsaw thing was funny because I've been living in Japan in apartments here for 15 years. I have never had a chainsaw in my apartment.
I was. I thought if they had to justify it, I guess they have this like big, like weird internal garden that this
Yeah,
parrot lives in. Um, that I really thought the parrot, by the way, would pay off in some way.
yeah,
I
that was
thought the
interesting.
parrot would like answer the phone or something at the end.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was wondering about the parrot too because I completely forgot about. It's been so long since I last saw this movie, and so when I saw the parrot there, I kept thinking that there was going to be something with him, and just like nothing ever happens with him. He's just kind of there the whole time.
He's just like a thing that's like, are they going to kill the parrot?
Hmm.
Because they come close to killing the parrot a couple
Hmm.
times, either through crossfire or it sort of seems like they're going to intentionally kill the
Yeah,
parrot. Uh, but yeah, I thought the chainsaw was like justified by being maybe a gardening tool.
maybe. Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
stretch.
yeah.
I don't know why you would need that in the inside. They do have sort of like a tree in there,
Hmm.
so maybe. But
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah. But I did think it was. That's one thing I thought. I'm like, uh, just like I don't. I have a house now, and we live in like kind of a ruralish area, and I still don't have a chainsaw. But that was just something that I thought was kind of funny about it. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. There's a lot more in it than I think I had expected. I certainly didn't remember a lot of it. Like my memory of it, and granted, I saw it when I was like in university last time, so and I didn't know anything about Japanese society or the Japanese entertainment industry at the time. But watching it now, I can find a lot more stuff that's interesting about this as opposed to just the fun of like watching these two women fight.
I thought it was so. Another way that I chose this movie to talk about today was I went on your Letterboxd and I sorted by like best rated
Hmm.
down, and I this was one of the top ones.
Yeah, it got a lot of
Uh,
good reviews on it.
It has very good reviews on Letterboxd.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't have a big internet footprint. Like, I watched this on Tubi
Mm-hmm.
with commercials on streaming.
There was
So
a
on my computer.
There was apparently a remake also in the works. I'm not sure if this ever came out or not, but it was called The Right Girls in 2012,
I
directed by.
I looked for it. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so I don't think it ever came out. Which
With
Gemma Arterton and Jessica Alba.
and then Kevin Connolly was going to be in it for a second.
Yeah, it
Oh, it
was.
looks like it did come
It was
out.
directed by Andy Fickman, and in 2014, Fickman was replaced by Kevin Connolly.
Okay. Yeah, categorized. IMDb says in development.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe it'll come out at some point with different actors.
Mm-hmm.
Guess they still own it.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Basically, the only thing I see is Turner Classic Movies has a listing on it apparently as well, but I guess IMDb, you're right, is in development. So I don't know whatever happened with that, because I mean, I'm not sure
Or
if
maybe it came out as a non-distributed movie.
maybe,
And
yeah,
Turner Classic Movies was supposed to be the distributor, and they've yet to even show it anywhere.
maybe, yeah,
I can't tell.
Yeah,
But it's worth watching.
It
It's a
is.
good movie. Like, I would say it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
For such a short film, for such a movie that is like underrated. Obviously, not a lot of people know about it.
Right. It was released. It was also part of, if anyone can find this, you might want to check out this 3-disc box set called Danger After Dark, because that also includes Suicide Club, which is one of my favorite Japanese movies. And it's this other movie too in there called Moonchild, which I've never even heard of, so I don't know what that's like, but it seems it's like a science fantasy horror action movie is how it's described. That looks something that might be in. So if you check out this box set, if you can find this box set, Danger After Dark, I think it'd be worth picking up. But yeah, Claire, thanks so much for coming on. Do you have any final things you wanted to say about 2LDK?
Yeah, I think if you're like, you've got like an hour, you want to watch something interesting from the early 2000s, check it out. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, that does it for this episode of Japan on Film. Claire, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
They can find me on X and Instagram at Claire C. Downs. Or, my game is the Seventh Guest VR is on MetaQuest. It's also on PlayStation VR.
Okay, great. And we'll have links to some of that stuff in the show notes, so please make sure to check that out. As for us, japanonfilm.com is the website, and we are Japan on Film on Instagram and Blue Sky and Threads. Technically still on Twitter, although I don't go there anymore. So if you want to get in touch with me, it's better to go through one of the other places. And we are part of the We Made This network, so please check out some of the other podcasts on the network. Listen up after the credits for some trailers of some shows you might be interested in. And also, if you have not picked it up yet, my comic book, Paragons of Earth, which is done by myself, Thomas DJ, and Eric Johns, it is available at crowdfunder.com/paragonscomic. That's crowdfunder, no E, .com/paragonscomic. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. The Japan on Film podcast is produced by me, Perry Constantine, in conjunction with the We Made This podcast network. Visit japanonfilm.com for show notes, episodes, merchandise, and information about being a guest yourself. You can also reach out to me on the website's contact form if you have questions or comments about Japanese movies or the show itself. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at japanonfilm. If you'd like to help support the show, you can donate at japanonfilm.com, wemadethisnetwork.com, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links with information about each guest and join the discussion on the We Made This Discord in the show notes of each episode. And now, listen to hear what's coming up next on the We Made This Network.
Three rings for the elven kings under the sky.
7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone.
9 for mortal men doomed to die.
1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne.
In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. Welcome to One Rules Them All, a Lord of the Rings podcast on the We Made This podcast network. Myself, Luke Winch, and my co-host Baz Greenland will be exploring the new Amazon Prime series, The Rings of Power. Week by week, we should be analysing each episode with a foray of guests. We have also been revisiting the Peter Jackson films and looking at them from a new perspective. So join us every week as we discuss the world of Tolkien and the Rings of Power.
1 podcast to rule them all.
1 podcast to find them.
1 podcast to bring them all.
And on the We Made This network, bind them.
Do you believe in the existence of X-Files podcasts? Then the truth is in here. I'm Tony.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Carl.
And I'm Armordrake.
And the X-Cast is devoted to all things X-Files, such as in-depth episode discussions.
I love the 8th season being like, no, you're saying goodbye. And that's something pop culture doesn't do enough.
Interviews with many of the cast and crew from the show.
I had to audition repeatedly. I mean, I went in, I read for Chris and Frank. First I read for the casting director, Rick. And then I made it past that hurdle and read for Chris and Frank. Had a lovely meeting with them.
And special roundtable chats, commentaries, and fun bonus episodes.
But this is great. Mulder just having no idea what's going on.
On this beautiful boat with people not really speaking English.
You can find us on the We Made This podcast network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all good podcast players.
We'll see you in the basement. But until then,
trust
no
1.